Can't Be Influenced, where we talk about news and influencers, from celebrity to social media. Let's get into it. Welcome back, my pals, my buddies, my friends, to another episode of Can't Be Influenced. We're going to talk about the U.S. states and how they plan to sue Facebook next week. And then Texas waitress gets $2,000 tip. And then 27-year-old baby and a bad arse grandma in a restaurant. Then our main topic is going to be about an influencer, Alexis Sharkey, and her not disappearance, but what happened to her. It's a mystery. It's an ongoing case. There will definitely be a part 2 on this. Once more information starts coming out. Right now, it's hard to dig for anything when nothing's being brought up to the surface. It's a fresh case. This happened around Thanksgiving. So we're going to just dive into that as well from what information we have and the research that we have done. So thank you to Brandon for helping me research on this topic. And let's just go ahead and get into our first topic, which is about the U.S. states and how they plan to sue Facebook. Okay, so posted on CNBC, they say that, well, first off, you guys, it's around 30 states that are planning to sue Facebook, and it's led by New York. They're investigating Facebook Inc. for possible antitrust violations and plans to file a lawsuit against the social media giant next week. 4 sources familiar with the matter said on Wednesday. So we have 4 sources saying the same darn thing. So yes, it's going to happen. And there's something fishy going on. We always knew there was fishy stuff going on with Facebook. So the complaint would be the second major lawsuit filed against a big tech company this year. The Justice Department sued Alphabet Inc.'s Google in October. Also, now they're saying more than 40 states plan to sign onto the lawsuit, but that's from one source. They said without naming them, without naming the states. And then Facebook declined to comment on any of this. Of course. Why would they? They know they're in the wrong. They've gotten in trouble before about just privacy issues and targeted advertisements and all that stuff. Like, Facebook's always going through something. So the Federal Trade Commission, whose commissioners met on Wednesday, could file a related complaint with an administrative law judge or in district court. It is not known what the states plan to include in their complaint. But one allegation often made against Facebook is that it has strategically sought to buy small potential rivals, often at a big premium too. So Instagram, which was in 2012, you guys, and WhatsApp as well, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know Facebook owned WhatsApp. It's almost like Disney buying out all of these smaller companies and things like that. It's like Disney's starting to own everything. By the end of this all, in a few years or something, who knows? Most of these smaller companies or anything is going to be owned by just big corporations like Disney or Facebook. So anyways, according to this news site, salon.com, it says best case scenario is the court finds those acquisitions not anti-competitive because WhatsApp and Instagram weren't competitors of Facebook at time of the acquisitions. Worst case scenario, both companies have to be divested. So this guy, Gus Hurwitz, is an associate professor of law at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, had a similar observation to that. He says it's hard to read the tea leaves, but most likely the attorneys general are going to focus on what they see as anti-competitive acquisitions. So he wrote that to salon.com. I'd imagine this would include not just things like the Instagram purchase, but Facebook's use of data from its acquisition of Onavo. And Onavo, if you guys didn't know, is a VPN spyware, which this was written in 2019. It said Facebook will end its unpaid market research programs and proactively take its Onavo VPN app off the Google Play Store in the wake of backlash following TechCrunch's investigation about Onavo code being used in Facebook research app that sucked up data about teens. Yeah, yikes, no thank you. Hurwitz said worst case is these states push to break up Facebook. That would go beyond trying to unravel specific mergers, but putting in place more substantial, ongoing, structural separation between the company's various components. But that seems an unlikely outcome. He also added, as to why the states and DOJ are going after these companies, in part, it's just politics in response to understandable consumer concern. These companies are large and have made some seemingly concerning moves in recent years. Facebook has. So Hertz pointed out that there is an enigma at the core of the puzzle of competition law. In order to provide the pro-consumer services that they do at the prices they offer, which are free, companies like Facebook need to sometimes behave in ways that are problematic. So these suits aren't likely to improve upon the status quo, but they are just about the only tool that attorney generals have to respond to legitimate concerns, is what Hurwitz concluded. Now, if an antitrust lawsuit is indeed filed against Facebook next week, it will be the second instance of high-profile litigation of that nature against a tech giant this year. As we stated previously at the beginning of this whole topic, in October, the Justice Department filed a lawsuit against Google for allegedly violating antitrust laws. So this is not the first time that Facebook has been targeted for potential antitrust violations. The current antitrust investigation was first announced last year with the New York Attorney General, I think it's Letitia James, explaining at the time that the state's Attorney General were probing whether Facebook had endangered consumer data, reduced the quality of consumers' choices, or increased the price of advertising. Then Elizabeth Warren D. Mass, she responded to that antitrust investigation news by linking it to the Justice Department and FTC probes, pointing out that if my plan to tax excessive lobbying had been in place during that time, Facebook would have paid $39 million in taxes, money that could have been directed to the FTC's antitrust efforts. So the antitrust concerns about Facebook, they spilled over into 2020 and accumulated in a committee hearing in which Democrats discussed consumer rights issues and Republicans accused companies like Facebook and Google of suppressing right-wing voices. So this woman, who's an associate professor of law at Fordham University School of Law, explained in her testimony at the hearing that antitrust laws and strong antitrust laws are essential for freedom and for a thriving economy. The highly concentrated big tech marketplaces and the existing abuses of big tech enabled by their dominant positions poses a major democratic threat. Then Franklin Foer, I believe that's how you say his last name, a staff writer at The Atlantic, told Salon last year that the core problem is that antitrust over the course of the decades has withered and narrowed and lost any sense of imagination. And so as a moral matter, it would seem to me, and as a moral economic political matter, Google and Facebook are too powerful. They should be held to account by antitrust. Now, the question is, how would Facebook be held accountable if higher courts ruled that its acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp violated antitrust laws? So the Hart-Scott Radio Act requires that the FTC and Justice Department be notified about large mergers and acquisitions before they take place. Almost always that means that it will never be challenged, but there is no legal impediment to the agencies or states or private plaintiffs going back later and saying, actually, that was anti-competitive and should never have happened, so now you have to divest. So basically, Facebook is just a huge mouth monster trying to devour everything, all markets, and wants to take all our information and treat us like numbers and make money off of us. That's it. That's all they want to do. They want to collect our information against our privacy and what we want, because I don't think we want Facebook to know what we shop for or things, targeted ads and things like that. No, that feels like, okay, maybe it's convenient in a way, but that just feels a little too intrusive, in my opinion. We know what we want. If we want to go buy it, we'll go do it. We don't need to keep seeing these ads and everything like that. Facebook is just, in my opinion, definitely taking over everything that they can, every social media spot that they can, because they want to try to collect as much information and everything about all of us, so then they can have targeted ads, which in turn make money for them. So our next topic here is about a waitress in Texas, and this is going to be pretty clean, cut, dry to the point. So basically, this woman, she was new. She was a new server, and she had a lot of tables. It was her first time taking on everything on her own. I believe that's what I read. And so there was one guy she kept apologizing to, saying, I'm so sorry for the slow service. I'm new, things like that. You know, he goes, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and close everything out. You don't have to worry about it. And then go ahead and just send me the bill or bring me the receipt, the bill. And he was just planning on paying for it anyway. Super nice people like that, by the way. Just give hope to the world. I'm telling you. So she was like, okay. So she goes and prints out his bill, brings it to him. He pays the $2,000 bill. By the way, what are you ordering? That's $2,000. I don't know if this is like a high class restaurant or not, but so yeah, $2,000 bill. And then he gave her a $2,000 tip. So when she saw that he left a $2,000 tip, she was just about crapped herself. Obviously, I would. You probably would. So the restaurant said they couldn't do that. They claimed that they could only do tips in $500 increments and stuff like that. So people that worked with this woman, the other servers, they were like, okay, so why don't you go ahead and just give her tip in $500 increments? And the restaurant goes, well, we can't do that. So the woman's like, oh, wow, okay. And then I guess everybody was kind of irate. And the guy who left that big tip, the customer who left the big tip, he called the restaurant and asked, what's the problem? Did she get it? And all this. And they said, well, we can't do it. They ended up not saving his information, so they couldn't get back a hold of him. But basically, what ended up happening is they were able to give her money they were able to give her the check. Now, the biggest concern with this whole thing, the reason why the owner of the restaurant couldn't really do it, even in those small increments, is because it was a tip. So when your bank sees that there's a huge amount of money being taken out and it's for a tip, they're going to like freeze your card or something like that. Like it's going to look suspicious. So they're going to try to protect you. So then they got it all ironed out. All is well. She got her money. She has 2 young kids and Christmas is literally around the corner. I hope something like this happens for at least a couple of you out there. I sure would love it. Oh my gosh, should be a game changer. But so there's our heartwarming story. How great is that? Okay, so this next news story kind of blew my mind. Science is getting crazy. So I don't know whether to be scared of that or not. I mean, how do you feel? But basically, there's this embryo that they had frozen like negative 300 something degrees in 1990 or something around there. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the details on that. But then they just recently thawed the baby, the embryo, and it's alive. It actually worked. So now they're like, okay, that's the longest an embryo has ever been frozen and able to be birthed. So here's the story. On BBC News, they say baby girl born from record-setting 27-year-old embryo. Okay? So when Molly Gibson was born in October of this year, it was 27 years in the making. So her embryo was frozen in October 1992. Okay, so I was close 1990s and stayed that way until February 2020, this year, when Tina and Ben Gibson of Tennessee adopted the baby. They say it. I don't know. Molly is believed to have set a new record for the longest frozen embryo to have resulted in a birth, breaking a record set by her older sister Emma. Yeah, so they ended up in the 90s, early 90s. They had frozen 2 twin embryos, not twin, maybe, well, I guess it would be considered twin. I don't know. Basically, they had the 2 embryos and their sisters. And so Emma, she was adopted by, I believe, the same couple. And that was a couple years ago. And so she was, the world record for longest frozen embryo. But now it's her younger sister that's going to be. The mom says, we're over the moon. And I still get choked up. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would have not just 1 girl, but 2, I would have said you were crazy. Because the family struggled with infertility for nearly 5 years. Before Mrs. Gibson's parents, they saw a story about embryo adoption on a local news station and they kind of told her about it. So they said, that's the only reason that we share our story. Because if my parents hadn't seen this on the news, then we wouldn't be here. Miss Gibson, 29, said, I feel like it should come full circle so somebody else knows that is possible. Miss Gibson, she's an elementary school teacher, and her husband, who's 36-year-old, is a cybersecurity analyst connected with the National Embryo Donation Center, NEDC, a Christian nonprofit in Knoxville that stores frozen embryos that in vitro fertilization patients decided not to use and chose to donate instead. So families like the Gibsons can then adopt one of the unused embryos and give birth to a child that is not genetically related to them. There are an estimated 1 million frozen human embryos stored in the U.S. right now, according to NEDC, which NEDC was the National Embryo Donation Center. So Mark Mellinger, the NEDC's marketing and development director, said that the experience with infertility is common among families who seek embryo donations. He said he'd probably say 95% have encountered some sort of infertility, and that they feel honored and privileged to do this work and help these couples grow their families. After their first embryo adoption, Miss Gibson gave birth to Emma in 2017. So 3 years before this baby this year. And like I said, she was world record first. Now she's not. For the longest frozen embryo, she's not anymore. And she was beat by her sister 3 years. Who knows? The next one's going to be even longer, so we'll see. Miss Gibson gave birth to Emma in 2017, swapping sleepless nights praying for children with the sleepless nights of motherhood. It's the best kind of tired, and it's the best kind of exhausted, she said. So, founded 17 years ago, the NEDC has facilitated more than 1,000 embryo adoptions and births, and now conducts over 200 transfers each year. Similar to a traditional adoption process, couples can decide if they would like a closed embryo adoption or an open one, allowing for some form of contact with the donor family. And this contact ranges between a couple of emails each year to a cousin-like relationship, Mr. Mellinger said. How would you guys feel about that? So if you adopted an embryo and gave birth to the embryo, to the baby, would you still want to be in contact with those parents? And I think it's kind of weird because some of these embryos, if they were like frozen in the early 90s, how old are the original parents now? So that makes you kind of wonder as well, because they might be even old enough to be the children's grandparents. How weird is that to think about it that way? Couples are presented with 200 to 300 donor profiles, complete with donor families' demographics history. The Gibsons had wanted a child for so long, the options were overwhelming. Of course they were. We did not care what this baby looked like, where it came from, said Mrs. Gibson. She sought advice from the NEDC, where an employee told her to pick something silly and go from there. What does that mean, by the way? Something silly? I have no idea what that means. My husband and I are smaller people, and so we went through and narrowed it down by height and weight and looked for something similar to ours, and then they narrowed it down. The Gibsons' children, Molly and Emma, are genetic siblings. Both embryos were donated and frozen together in 1992, when Tina Gibson was around a year old, by the way. So the mom of these girls, she was a year old when these embryos that she just gave birth to, that they just de-thawed and she gave birth to, when they were originally frozen and preserved, she was only a year old, the mom. How crazy is that? To wrap your head around that, science is nuts. So anyways, according to the NEDC, Emma's 24-year-old embryo was the oldest in history to have been born until Molly came along this year in 2020. Emma loves her new little sister, said the mom. She introduces her to anyone that sees her as my little sister Molly. And Miss Gibson has loved seeing the similarities between the girls, including a tiny wrinkle between their eyebrows when they're mad or upset. Now, according to the NEDC, the shelf life for frozen embryos is infinite. The time frame is limited, however, by the age of technology. The first baby born from an embryo frozen after IVF was born in Australia in 1984. So it's entirely possible that there will someday be a 30-year-old embryo that comes to birth, Mr. Mellinger said. How crazy is that? I wanted to share that with you guys because I kind of was like, what? Okay. Kind of in the dark about that. I didn't know that was possible for that long of time. Are you kidding me? It's very interesting to think about. All right, so our next little story is about a grandma. I also found this one interesting. Grandma or not, it's a moral duty to protect your family. And that's what this grandma did. Age doesn't matter. She was about to whoop some booty. So what happened was this customer came in. She was upset because her order wasn't ready. It's a restaurant in San Francisco. And yeah, her order wasn't ready yet. And the woman behind the counter, which is the daughter of that grandma, she was trying to talk to the mad customer. And then her little son came in. I think he got out of school, something like that. I don't know, but he ended up walking into the restaurant and he went up to his mom, and she was holding him in her hands. And this customer, this woman who was irate, didn't care that there was a child in the hands of this other woman behind the counter. She was just mad at her because she didn't have her food. Come on, right? So she was throwing hand sanitizer bottles, big hand sanitizer bottles. She threw one, I believe, okay? And it dented the hand sanitizer because she missed the woman. I don't know if it was purpose or if she has bad aim, but oh my gosh, are you kidding me? How about heck to the no? The grandma came out because she heard all this disruption and everything, and she came out to go check and see what was going on. And she saw this woman being crazy. And the customer, the woman, she said something along the lines of, I'm going, threatening that she's going to kill the girl or whatever. And obviously you're not going to take those threats lightly. So the grandma's like, oh, hell no. She basically pushed the woman out of the store. I think she threw a couple items first. They had a little throwing war. And then she took a table, put it on its side, and was just kind of police push crowds with those safeguards, those shields or whatever. Use the table as something like that and push the woman out of the store. The woman fell over outside of the store, and then passerbys were stopping and checking out what was going on. And then that woman seemed to get overwhelmed, knew she was probably in the wrong, and ran off. Right now, they're trying to figure out the identity of this woman. So I hope they catch her and she gets in trouble for this, because that is not cool. You guys, don't be that mad. Try to be considerate and understanding of other people's circumstances. Nobody's dang perfect, okay? And right now, restaurants have been hit hard. So I don't know. I think it speaks volumes when somebody comes in and they're acting that way and they can't put themselves in other people's shoes. They're just me mentality. It's going to get you nowhere. Okay, here's our main topic. Now, guys, before we get into our main topic about Alexis, Sharkey, I want to put a little disclaimer, and I want to say a message to the family that I am sorry for your loss, and I couldn't imagine losing a child or a family member that's close to me. And so my heart goes out to the family and friends, loved ones of Alexis, who are feeling the impact of her passing. And I hope that it starts coming out what actually happened, so this family gets the justice they deserve and they get the closure that they deserve for Alexis. Okay? And I'm not going to try to have big accusations, but I do have my own opinions, and you may disagree or agree with them, and that's totally fine. We're not all the same. We think differently, so please be understanding that this is just my opinion, and yours could be very different, and that's totally fine. I especially wanted to say all of this beforehand because this is still a fresh, new situation. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alexis Robinault, who was also known by the name Alexis Sharkey, was a 26-year-old who was originally from Pennsylvania before moving to Texas and studied biology education in Pittsburgh. Alexis was an Instagram influencer with 20,000 followers. She was a full-time influencer, a mentor at Monat. It's a premium hair and skincare company that relies on a direct sales/social marketing approach. And although her Instagram was all glamour shots, her Facebook posts tended to be towards politics. She shared some political opinions on Facebook, where she posted information that diminished the seriousness of COVID-19 and news stories critical of President-elect Joe Biden. From what I understand, she wasn't a big fan of Joe Biden, neither was her husband, and her husband both thought COVID-19 was sort of a sham. In a post on abortion, she revealed, and this is what she said, I'm quoting, "I was a child who grew up in a loving Christian home who had all Christian family and friends. I was truly indoctrined in it. She also wrote, quoting, "Scrolling through Facebook and seeing all these posts judging people for abortions is making me feel sick. I've never had one, and I still feel sick. So much judgment, you have no idea what anyone's going through." I believe it's everyone's individual right to do what they feel is right for them and their family. I should not and will not have a say-so in other people's lives, and I'm not going to judge them. Period. Also, life's too short to just dwell and worry about other people to the point that it starts intoxicating your own mental health in your own life. So let's continue on. Alexis is almost always described as funny, incredibly intelligent, and energy that was simply contagious. And looking through her Instagram, you can see that she's a beautiful girl. She has interesting posts, and I like that she travels and all this stuff. I liked her content. She was a great content creator. Now we're going to jump to the hard stuff here. She was found dead and naked, you guys. It was 8:30 a.m. CT time, 2 days after Thanksgiving. So this is her story so far. Tanya Ricardo, which is Alexis's best friend. So Tanya and Alexis both spent Thanksgiving at Alexis's house, and they made plans to watch movies with other friends all day on Saturday. The last time Tanya and Alexis spoke was around 6 p.m. Friday, November 27, the day after Thanksgiving. The same day, she initially vanished without a trace. Tanya, her friend, got worried the following day when text messages and phone calls went unanswered because she was attached to her phone. She's a social media queen. She is an influencer. She works from her phone. And that's what her friend Tanya said. It was out of the ordinary that she wasn't responding back. She's always on her phone. One friend said that she ran over to her apartment and she wasn't there, and they were supposed to meet up. The mother said and responded to this openly, and she goes, "When you start to hear these stories and you just know that's not right, something's wrong." It's a mother's intuition, right, you guys? The last time that she spoke to her mother, and her mother's name's Stacy Clark Robinault, it was on Thanksgiving. The last time she talked to her mom was on Thanksgiving. The mom said Thanksgiving was a busy day on her end and their end. So it was just one of those like passing by type of love you things. And the mom lives in Pennsylvania. So then Friday, the mom says, honestly, Friday got away. It was a busy day. We never talked. And then she went missing Friday night, and I have not seen her or heard from her since. Now, Alexis had been in touch with friends around 6 p.m. Friday. Her mother said there was an argument, and she left and didn't take her car. Now, we just don't know who the argument was with or any additional details about this argument. And that's why a part 2 is probably going to be necessary on this whole case. And this actually confuses me, this bit of information, because her mom said that she didn't even talk to Alexis on Friday, but then she knew that there was a dispute. There was some kind of argument or fight, but she doesn't know who with. So how did she know that? And that's where I'm kind of confused, and I want to lay that out there. So Alexis moved to Houston, Texas in January with her husband, Tom. They were married for almost a year. That's not that super long, by the way. And I don't know how long they were together beforehand. It was Tom who called Stacy, Alexis's mother, on Saturday, November 28th, 2 days after Thanksgiving. And he called Alexis's mother to tell her that Alexis was missing and he hadn't heard from her since that Friday. So maybe that's how the mom got the information, by the way, that there was an argument and she didn't take her car or something like that. Maybe it was from him. The mom, Stacy, said the family was now in full panic mode. Before Sharkey moved to Houston, which Alexis Sharkey, moved to Houston, she lived in Odessa, where she worked at Twin Peaks, where she met her future husband, Tom Sharkey. Tom Sharkey is a 49-year-old who works as a consultant at West Texas, a Facebook page that describes its mission as to provide information relevant to West Texas regarding travel, culture, and life. He frequently shares political views on Facebook, just like Alexis did, He wrote with one video of Biden, "Yeah, great choice. Do your research. This is a bad decision, America." And then he also posted about COVID-19 possibly being a rumor. Now, days before his wife went missing, he wrote, and this is a quote from his page. He wrote, "When a person loses all they consider everything in their life, and they are at their own personal rock bottom, it is then when you see who they truly are and choose to be. Life hits hard. Hit harder." I read over that a couple times because I was trying to understand what in the heck that meant. So if any of you listeners have any idea of what that really could mean, if you can decipher that, let me know. Maybe it's just going over my head, but I'm going to read that over again. He said, and this is quoting him directly, "When a person loses all they consider everything in their life, and they are at their own personal rock bottom, it is then when you see who they truly are and choose to be. Life hits hard, hit harder." So maybe I don't know who he's talking about. It would make more sense to know who he's really talking about. It could be Alexis. Basically, I guess what that could be saying is when a person loses everything that they have, maybe by choice, and that they're just at their rock bottom, they have nothing, that's when you see who they really are and who they actually choose to be. But I don't understand why he said life hits hard, hit harder. So maybe someone close to him lost something, or he's just doing a general post about losing everything and how hard life can get. And it's not like personal to him. He's just trying to be a great A+ guy and give some advice for people out there who are at their rock bottom and to hit life back harder. So honestly, who knows? But that was a couple days before she went missing, and days before his wife went missing. He wrote that. So, and this is a message for a friend. This is another thing he wrote. He said, "This is a message for a friend. Now, get up, rub some dirt in it. I know who you are. Now show me." Okay, so let's go on. He described the marriage as happy and solid, and that Alexis was his life partner. Just dreamy, everything's great. He posted, "My world, my everything. I'm so lost now." My one and only, her husband, Tom Sharkey, wrote that on his Facebook after news his wife's death was confirmed. And then he shared a collage of photos of Sharkey and said, "Baby, please give me strength. Do you remember when we talked and joked about getting old? And I said, that's the one thing you would never beat me at. And that we laughed so hard because you're so competitive." And it was a joke about their 23-year age difference, saying that's one thing you'll never beat me at is my age because she's so young. Now, in an interview, he said they couldn't ID my wife. They didn't know who she was. She was just there. He said that he told his wife not to drive when he last saw her alive, which makes me wonder when that was. Was that Friday, you guys? Was it that Friday? And then that's how the mom got that information about the argument, that she couldn't say who it was with or anything like that. She couldn't say who it was with. Maybe it was from him because he called her Saturday and said maybe the last time he saw her was Friday. He called Alexis his everything and said they shared a Thanksgiving meal together Thursday morning. He said the loss of his life partner has left him destroyed. Sharkey said, Tom Sharkey, the husband, said he's received death threats since his wife's disappearance, and death made headlines across the country. So her death made headlines across the country. Tom described his marriage as happy. He said they weren't filing for a divorce. She wasn't happy. She was stressed. I would cuddle her to try to make her strong. She was an amazing woman. Sir, my wife was an amazing woman. She really was. There's always other sides to everything. I was the one holding her, cuddling her, and building her back up, said Tom. I don't need to set this record straight. I'll let it play out the way it is. I know what my life was with my wife. She understood me. I understood her, he said. We didn't fight when she left. I just told her she couldn't drive under the influence. She left anyhow. This is where we're at. So far, let's kind of recap on this from our understanding on this information. Basically, the last time anyone heard from Alexis was Friday, and it was Friday evening, and I believe it was probably her husband that heard from her last, I would assume, because he said don't drive under the influence. I'm assuming that's the case. So husband said Friday night to her, don't leave under the influence. And then she went missing. And then that next day, which would be Saturday, he called Alexis's mother to let her know that he's concerned that she's missing. And so maybe that's when he told Alexis's mother, Stacy, about the argument. Maybe there was an argument and he told Stacy that there was an argument Friday before she left to not drive under the influence, he claims. And then so when Stacy talked to a news place or was interviewed, she didn't claim who the argument was with and maybe even pretended she didn't know. I don't know. Maybe she didn't want to throw Tom under the bus, but something just doesn't line up for me. Let me know what you think. But that's to kind of recap so far. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Some say it wasn't all happy ever after with Tom. According to her mother, Alexis's mother, Stacy, she thinks there was absolutely foul play. And it's not hard to find speculation on social media that Alexis's husband, Tom, was involved. To be clear, cops identified the victim by her maiden name, which is Robinault, I believe. And according to her friend Tanya, she recently opened up to us about it, and divorce was being filed. She was a very private person. She didn't share a lot about what was going on at home. Then her friend Lauren said, I'm going to be honest, she confided in me about how worried she was for her safety when we went to Marfa, Texas, almost a month ago. We were sitting down at dinner and she lost it. We walked back to our hotel room and she confided in me that night in things. I looked at her and thought, she's petrified. This girl is scared for her life. When Lauren was asked who Alexis was worried about, she remained silent. So both friends did not want to disclose who Alexis feared in her life because they did not want to jeopardize the homicide investigation. She was always happy, always had a smile on her face. A lot of people looked up to her. She was just very, very positive, Tanya said. I don't know who could have done something like this to her. The Houston Police Department reported a team of city workers found Alexis naked on the side of the road in Houston's Energy Corridor on Saturday, November 28th, and this was several miles from Alexis's apartment. The medical examiner's office confirmed it was Alexis Sharkey on Monday, November 30th, because they couldn't identify her body. There was no invisible wounds, and the autopsy was still pending. The way in which she was found, my child would never do that to herself, said Stacy. That doesn't even make sense. That is absolutely foul play. And that's what Stacy, her mom, claimed and said. Stacy had said that she and her daughter had been together last Christmas, and Alexis had been planning to visit again for the upcoming holidays. So if that tells you anything, guys, she wasn't suicidal. She doesn't seem like she was on drugs. We don't really know. We don't know her personally. All we do know is that her friends said that her relationship, her marriage, was not great. But according to Tom, it was. And I just want to leave it at that for now. The investigation right now is still underway, but at this point, inconclusive. They can't find anything out. They can't say anything. We're going to come out to part 2 and hopefully piece everything together so you guys have some closure on this as well, because I'm interested to see what's going on. I want to know what's going on too. This isn't fair. She was a young woman and she deserved better than this. And if she wasn't happy in her marriage, and Tom, let me just say, Tom is a bodybuilder. He's like 49. And to be honest, between me and you guys, I don't think he's very attractive. I think that he was pretty lucky to have her. And it's almost like she was like his prize, his little trophy wife type of thing. And so if the marriage really was going sour and she actually was concerned for her life, maybe he did kind of lose it and go crazy. A lot of these crimes revolve around just obsessive, crazy behavior. And that very well could have been this case. I'm saying very well could have been. I'm not saying it is, because we don't really know, right? So this is just my opinion. Like I put a disclaimer out at the beginning of this main topic here. Just because I want to cover my tracks, I don't want to put out there any bold statements because I can't. I'm not working as a detective on this case. I'm just trying to research and find and piece together and put my own opinions out there. You can formulate your own from the information that I give you, because the information that I give you, basically, the basic information that I give you is facts. You can find it, but this is all my opinion outside of that. I feel like it's a little suspicious on Tom's part. Sorry. There's a GoFundMe account set up to donate for funeral expenses and travel for the family to be here. So if you guys want to check out the link in the description below, at least that's something I can contribute and try to help with. If you have anything, I know right now Christmas is coming up. COVID might have hit your family hard as well. It's been a rough year, and I just know it's hard. But if you can donate, or if this spoke to you at all, the link's going to be in the description below. So, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. We have some juicy topics lined up for our next couple of episodes. So I hope to see you there. Subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes. Subscribe anywhere you listen. I know I like to listen on Castbox and Google Play podcast, but anyway, just subscribe, and it would just mean a lot to me if you guys could let me know how you're liking the podcast and that you've been listening. I know I have a couple people out there who have been listening every single episode, so shout out to you. I don't know who you are. I would like to know who you are. Anyway, have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one. All right, guys. Until next time.